Hello friends, welcome back to Carla's Kitchen. Today we are doing simple cake mix cookies, and these are a fantastic dessert. If you're anything like me and you buy your cake mix only when it's on sale and tend to stock up, then you also find that you have a tendency to need to use it at a certain point as we're approaching the expiration date. So it's a quick and easy way. The cookies, if you've never had them, it's like the best part of a cupcake, basically, because you can add frosting, as you see I've got out on the counter, or I'll show you another method to just add a little sweetness to the outside edge. We'll do a little bit of both. You can add mix-ins if you like, and you can do any flavor cake mix that you want, as long as the box is at least 15.25 ounces or larger. Then this recipe should work for you. So you'll need a mixing bowl, scooping device of some kind. I'm just using an ice cream scooper. You want to have 2 eggs set out to room temperature, a half stick of butter, again out to room temperature, or you can melt it if you want to. We're going to go back in the fridge in either case, so if you want to go ahead and melt the butter, that's fine as well. I've left mine sit out to get to room temperature, so it should be soft enough to do the mixing that we need. I'm going to start with putting that a whole stick of butter, a half cup of butter, into the mixing bowl. To that, I'm going to add 2 eggs. And today I'm just using classic yellow cake mix, and we're going to do chocolate chip mix-ins and a chocolate frosting. So your standard yellow cake with chocolate frosting. I've done this with butter pecan, cake mix, tried it with strawberry cake mix, lemon cake mix, various chocolates as well. They're all delicious. You know, again, like I always say, just cook to your taste. What you and your family like is what you're going to want to use, so they will be eaten. And then we're just going to go ahead and stir everything until well combined. You can use a mixer if you wish. It's not necessary. Hand mixing will do. Now, if, like me, you enjoy adding a little bit of extra to your box cake mixes, now is the time to do that once you get everything well incorporated. I'm going to go ahead and add, if you're going to use any of the extracts, I'm going to put a little bit of butter extract, just to make sure that butter flavor really comes through. And I'm also going to go in with some vanilla extract. I almost always add a little bit of vanilla extract to my cake mixes. And I will say this, if you're doing a chocolate cake mix, not only would I add vanilla, but I put a little pinch of salt in there as well. Go ahead and give one more mix just to make sure the extract gets incorporated fully around. You don't have any bits of dry powder. And if you are using any type of mix-ins, as I said, I've got some chocolate chips here I'm going to throw in there. I've got white and chocolate chips. You can do candy, shaved coconut, you know, anything your imagination can take you to. I happen to have these handy in my kitchen, so I'm just going to put a little bit in there so that even the cookies that I don't put the chocolate frosting directly onto will still have a little bit of chocolate flavor in there. Yellow cake and chocolate frosting, it's just a very classic combination of flavors. So that looks good to me. You know, use as much or as little as you don't want. You just don't want the entire thing to be the filling and not the cake mix. So you can always go sparingly, mix it, and if it looks like there's not enough, put a little bit more in. And we're just going to kind of fold those pieces in and make sure that they get well incorporated and mixed around so that they're evenly distributed throughout the thicker batter. Now I will say this, the batter is going to be thicker here for me because I chose to use just softened butter. If you melt the butter It is easier to mix. The other side of that coin is the next step is a little more challenging, of scooping the cookie dough out. So pick your poison, and how you, if you'd rather have it easier to mix, melt your butter first. And if you don't mind that, but you want it easy to scoop out into portions, then go ahead and just let your butter come to room temperature and be softened. Okay? That is mixed well enough for me. So next we're gonna reconfigure here a little bit, and we're gonna scoop onto the cookie sheet. Alright, gang. Like I said, I've got an ice cream scoop. You can use whatever you want. Just a regular spoon works fine as well. Just gonna get a scoop together, and I like to round it a little bit, same as you do for a meatball, what have you, and then put that onto the parchment lined pan. You can just do this with spoons and let it go into whatever shape you want, but if you want your cookies to be a little bit more cake-like and not flatten and spread out, this is how I would suggest. So we're going to continue doing that. I like the scooper because it gives consistent size shaped cookies. We're going to fill up the entire cookie sheet and then go into the fridge for at least a half an hour. We want these to really be firm before we go into the oven, and that will also help minimize the spread once we're in the hot oven. Alrighty, once your cookie portions have been in the fridge for at least a half an hour, go ahead and preheat your oven to 350 degrees Fahrenheit. And if you want to, what I did was I went ahead and just gave them all a good second roll now that they were firmed up and easily able to be rolled. I'm going to take half of the dough balls and just place them out on my cookie sheet here. I'm going to leave half of them plain and just pop them in the oven because we're going to put frosting on those. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That leaves us with an odd one, so we'll pop one over here. Now they should be good and firm because I used softened butter. I didn't fully melt the butter, and I've been in the fridge at least a half hour. I expect that these won't spread too much while they're in the oven. If you did use melted butter, you may need to chill them for a little over half an hour just to get them to solidify enough to be ready for the oven. So I'm going to go ahead and put sheet 1 into the oven. About 10 minutes I'll start checking it, 10 to 12 minutes depending on your oven and your taste. And then we'll show you how you can finish off the other half and get those in the oven when they're ready. Alrighty, gang, so I've got my first sheet pan in the oven, and now I've gotten out some confectioner sugar. And again, all of these are totally optional. You can do just the plain cake batter if you want. You don't have to add mix-ins, and you certainly don't have to do this part. This is how one can get the crinkle cookie effect. It works visually, it works better with darker colored cookies such as red velvet or chocolate, but you can certainly do it with any cookie just to add a little bit of sweetness if you don't want to put frosting or you don't have any frosting to put on your cake cookies once they're done. So I'm just going to take a small round dish with some confectioner sugar, take one of my dough balls, pop it in there, make a little mess. That's alright. And then I'm just going to kind of roll it around until the cookie ball is completely coated. Onto the sheet pan, ready to go in the oven. And I'm going to repeat that with all the dough balls I have on this sheet pan. The other sheet pan I did not do this on, and I'm going to put frosting on those instead. You could certainly do both if you really have a sweet tooth. You could do this and add frosting. For the folks I cook for, they tend to tell me it's too sweet if I do that. So up to you how you want to do. I'm just going to repeat that process with the rest of the dough balls here, and then we'll be ready to go in the oven with this sheet pan. If you find your sugar gets a little too compacted when you're rolling the dough balls around in there, just grab a spoon and loosen it back up. It's much easier from the ways that I've tried to just kind of do it this way and then continue rolling the dough balls back into your loosened sugar. It coats it really easy. You can just kind of circle it around in a small round dish and voila, you're coated. Alright, gang, so I was in the oven about 11 minutes, for 11 minutes per sheet for the size that I've got. Basically want to let your cookies go until they're a nice light brown on the bottom. You can just start to see browning around the edges. And that way your cookie will be nice and solid once you take it off the sheet pan. When I pull the pan out of the oven, I let it sit on pot holders for 2 minutes before transferring the cookies over to a cooling rack to continue cooling the rest of the way. I will say this, if you're doing the confectioner sugar method, reuse one of your parchment paper sheets underneath the cooling rack, because they will drop a little bit of the confectioner sugar down, or you can just wipe your counters down when you're done. Your choice, but before you throw the parchment away, you can reuse it one last time to catch any of the loose pieces of sugar that didn't really stick to the cookies themselves. So here on the right, we've got the plain cookies that I just put the batter in the fridge, put it into the oven. What I'm going to do is, once these are completely cooled, I'm going to flip them all over and we're going to put the frosting on the bottom side. And it will be just like the best bite of top of the cupcake that you've ever had. And for these here with the crinkle action that have the powdered sugar in them, I'm just going to store those as is in an airtight container once they've cooled completely. So we are pretty close to being ready to frost these guys here. I'm going to go ahead and turn them all over. And then I'm going to just use store-bought frosting. I have the whipped variety of chocolate. I prefer, it's a little bit lighter tasting. I am going to add a couple of ingredients to it and then throw it into a piping bag, because it's just easier to apply that way, in my opinion. If you don't have piping bags and tips, you can always use a baggie and cut the corner off, or you can just use a good old-fashioned knife or offset spatula and just smear the frosting on there. Totally up to you. So we'll be right back with the frosting and then we'll be finished. I've gone into my mixing bowl with the entire container of whipped chocolate frosting, and I'm just going to give that a little stir to bring it back to life. It kind of compacts a little bit as it's down in there, and you can certainly use a whisk for this if you want to. Totally up to you. I'm going to go in with just a bit of vanilla. I like to add vanilla to pretty much all of my baking projects, including chocolate. So I put it in brownies and everything. And whenever I have chocolate, I add a little bit of salt. You don't have to use sea salt. You can use any kind of salt you like, but I've said before in other videos, chocolate and salt are BFFs, and you really want to put those together. So give it a good whipping in your bowl after you've put the salt and vanilla in there, just to make sure we're evenly incorporated. And now is the point where if you just want to spread it on the cookies, go ahead and do that. I'm going to get out the piping bag and just make it look a little more presentable. So I'll be right back with that. Alrighty, so I'm just going to go around, and I've already turned the cookies over, and I'm just going to pipe some frosting onto the cookies. Again, you can do this however you like, as much or as little as you like. You have one of the most classic combination of cake and frosting, yellow cake with chocolate frosting, and we've added some chocolate chips in. Enjoy your cake mix cookies. If you find you have more than enough chocolate frosting left and you don't want to waste it after you've done all of the plain cookies, you can do just a little central decoration on the sugar-coated ones, and hopefully that won't bring up the sweet factor too much, and everyone will still enjoy the cookies. There you go. Thanks for stopping by today. Bye-bye.